Now I'm very excited to welcome David Delano from GetSportsStrong.com. You can find David on Twitter at GetSportsStrong and with Gabe over at SportsGrip. Dave, thanks for coming on the show, my man. How's this week shaping up for you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So far, it's shaping up pretty good. I mean, we're at that sports equinox time, great time for us, but also, busy time. We've got NHL, NBA, NFL, and college football, which we're here to talk about today. So I'm interested in talking to you today, and I'm just looking at finalizing my college football bets for this weekend.
Dude, you got to get sports real strong with all the stuff going on, man. It's just a lot to keep up with, but I feel you, man. It's this time of year where it sometimes can feel overwhelming, but if you just pace yourself and don't do too much and don't cheat and try to blow over stuff, you're going to still be profitable. So that's what we're going to try to preach. But you have a nice little destination, Get Sports Strong. And for our listeners or viewers that may not know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and that website?
Yes. So for myself, what we're doing right now and talking to you about college football, it's pretty much what I've always wanted to do. I've always been involved with sports, always played sports at different levels, never at a high enough level for it to be notable, but I always loved the game, tried to play at different levels for as long as possible, and tried to find different ways to connect with it. Even at this point, coaching youth and soccer and basketball, and the age ranges from 3 to 18, and one thing with this, with the sports betting aspect, is I was always exceptional when it came to, you know, contests. A lot of times, I enter those different contests where you can do the NFL pick'ems, the college football pick'ems, and every platform that you've seen for years, guys are always, trying to pick what they thought would happen. And I started getting into sports betting and dabbling in it. Started an account with a small amount and started realizing I was like, hey, I'm able to do pretty well at this than with a lot of people are. And one thing that I liked about sports betting, and one thing that I liked about sports, is that it's measurable, right? So a lot of times there could be people played at a higher level or pro level or college level, but with this, it's a different animal, and regardless of what level of an athlete you were at, it's a different discipline and mindset. And at the end of the day, you'll have your opinions, I'll have mine, but we're going to find out what happens on the field, right? Short term and long term. So I like that it's measurable, and something that we can win money on. And I mentioned to you with the title of the website, Get Sports Strong, just as far as just, I know sports betting, a lot of people look at it at the entertainment side of it, but if you're losing a lot of money and you have bad habits, it's not a lot of fun, and it's not real entertaining. So what I try to do is teach people how to bet on sports the right way so that you could be profitable long term. I get a lot of times people
Yeah.
ask you, how can I turn this $500 into 100,000, and what parlay should I put this $500 on? And tell people, that you're probably going to lose it, but just find a number that you're comfortable with. If you've got $500, maybe place $10 to $15 bets for a while, and
Yeah.
it's not as glamorous. And then once you build that up to 750, you can go a little higher and go up and up and up. And that's the long. I know it's not the the sexiest way to go about it, but that's how you win in the long term. And I'm just all about trying to just tell people the right way to do it, even though it's not always glamorous.
100%, man. We've always preached bankroll management. Stay away from those crazy parlays. Every time someone hits the book made about 5 times that, just at least on what they're showing on a ticket, but they do it to advertise it to you. And of course, every once in a while something's going to hit, but it's, as far as an ROI, the hold on these things are just massive for the books. Start low and see if you're good at it. If you were going to hit a parlay, you should have hit your bets anyway, right? And that's what I got a
Exactly.
buddy. I got a buddy that won't get off the parlays, and I even give him my plays, and sometimes he'll use some of them, and he always has one or two that loses. It's just, but he won't get off them, and I'm just like, well, if you just enjoy losing, $200-300 a weekend, and I guess that's your thing, man. But not for me. So I totally get what you're saying, and that's great that you're there to do that. And I stress all of it, David.
Yeah, you have all those weeks where you give your buddy your plays and you go 4-1 or 3-2 and you're feeling good about it. And he's like, I lost everything because he put them all together and then added a couple plays that you didn't give him, right?
Of course, something terrible too, some just god awful type thing, quarterback injured or something, right? Oh man, you see that too much. But yeah, with what the thing is like when you have time to pay attention to it and put the work we do, then you listen to those people, and that's kind of how I got started before I even started putting a ton of work into it back in the 2000s. So that's the gist of it. But let's talk a little college football, my man, and let's do buy low, sell high. So let's start with buy low, a team with respect to the market that you think might be a little bit undervalued. And this could be one of your plays later too.
Well, not to get too ahead, but as far as like even with the buy low, I think that SMU, I wouldn't really necessarily say that they're a buy low, but based off of where they were at the beginning of the season, I thought that they could be a sleeper team in the ACC. And I think they had that such a disappointing, even though they won, especially for bettors against the spread, that opening game against Nevada was not very much, didn't give you much to be excited about. And then they lost as a big favorite to BYU. But in hindsight, BYU is a lot better than a lot of people think. And you've got, Clemson there in the ACC and Miami. No one's really talking about, but nobody's really talking about them. But they don't have either of those teams on their schedule. Yeah. And I think that that's a team that is still there. They're still undefeated in the conference. And I think that the perception is that this team has 2 or 3 losses already, and that's not the situation. So I think that SMU is getting better, and I think that there's a lot of upside on that for that team.
I love it. That I agree with that. They are better than they looked, and that BYU loss is aging like a fine wine, my friend. That is absolutely fine for that loss. Snip Talks MMA says looking forward to Navy Notre Dame. We will get to Navy Notre Dame. That's going to be fun. We will get to that. So thank you for chiming in. Mine is, and I'm usually a guy that bets against my teams, but I'm going to say Wisconsin, it might be a little bit undervalued being a home dog here this big to Penn State. Wisconsin started out terrible. They did, and they weren't together by then. Tyler Van Dyke was the quarterback, and at the time he was better than Braden Locke, and that's our backup. But Braden Locke's playing pretty good right now. And if you look at the stats in the Big Ten, just in conference play, Wisconsin is near the top right now. I know they haven't played a big game, but they're the team that went to Rutgers and injured them. Rutgers was injured after the Wisconsin game. That's why they were so bad last week against UCLA. But they're beating everybody by margin here. So I'm thinking, this could be a little hint for later, but I think Wisconsin might be a little bit low right now. They seem to be playing good football together.
I agree with you on that, because when you really look at Wisconsin, and I said this might be a hint till later, there's a lot of good stuff that you're seeing. And it's one of those things, though, you think about the losses that they had. I mean, nothing to really be ashamed of, that Alabama and USC, but you feel like there's something missing there, although it's, statistically and in the way that the market has them valued, even at home this week, and we'll get to that. It doesn't really make sense. Sometimes it's just utter disrespect. Some of their advanced metrics and things look good. So I definitely agree with you. We'll see what happens. This weekend is going to be a big test, though, to find out
sure will.
Where Wisconsin is.
And we'll get to that game. But you got to remember, the Alabama loss was when they lost their quarterback in the very first drive. So that spun out of control. USC was a choke, but they were up by a lot. So, yeah, we'll get to that game. Sell high, my man. Who are you selling high this week or next week coming up here in college football, David?
Selling high for this week, I'm going to say it's really hard to say this. I don't try to keep the personal biases out of it, but I think that Michigan State, I'm still a little bit unsure about them. I think that this 4 points is a little bit tight. I know everybody's down on Michigan because this could be another, buy low on Michigan. And this seems like the year that Michigan State should get them. It really does. Coming off of that impressive win against Iowa, Michigan, their quarterback situation has been a mess. There's not too much to really to like there, but with I think this being the year that Michigan State should get them, I think that we might see the best game that Michigan has played this season. So whether you want to say buy low on Michigan or sell high on Michigan State, I think that right now this line earlier in the season, we would have probably thought this would be double digits. Now it's down to 4. So I think I'm selling on the Spartans and buying the Wolverines, at least for this week.
It's funny. One thing we preach is if you're somebody that bets on the team that looked great the week before and fades the team that looks bad the week before, you're probably a losing sports bettor, is what I say. You are not getting a premium here on Michigan State. This is like the top of the market if you want to play Michigan State, man. So just a fair warning for that. And maybe we'll get to that game coming up. I'm selling Colorado. It's now they're kind of in the favorite role here, and it's a little different when you're a favorite. It's a different mindset. I think that Deion does deserve credit for what he did, but they're playing a pretty frisky Cincinnati team, and public money's coming in here on Colorado. You got to look at what Colorado just beat, though. They just beat a terrible Arizona team. They lost their coach last year. They got nothing outside of Fafita and T-Mac. They got nothing, man. It is a bad. That is a bad team. And the UCF loss, well, UCF's got a great running team, but if they get behind, they can't run the ball. They got to throw it. At UCF was still with KJ Jefferson there. That loss that win for Colorado didn't age that well either. So I'm selling Colorado a little bit coming up here now that they're playing a different role for sure. Thoughts?
I might be. I think I might be on the opposite side of you with that one. Colorado was a team that I was not big on coming in the season, and after the first 2 weeks, I really wasn't on them. But they've definitely impressed me. Cincinnati definitely is a frisky team, but I think with Cincinnati coming off they had a big win against Arizona State. Now coming to Colorado, I think that it's a little bit of a tough spot. It's definitely going to be an interesting game. Colorado is more obviously explosive, but they're going to have to protect the quarterback going up against Cincinnati. They definitely want to play. The Bearcats want to play a little bit of an uglier game, but I think that Colorado, though, they really have started to impress me a lot more than I expected. So I think I'm going the other way with Colorado right now. That game against Cincinnati this week, it's probably not one on my card that I'm actually going to bet, but I'm not too sure that I'm in position to fade the Buffaloes right now.
Hey, man, I appreciate the honesty. That is great. And you know what? I stress to everybody, please don't agree with me to agree with me. Thank you for saying that, So that's interesting. In this game, it's going to give us some more information about Colorado for sure. I might have a play on it, but we'll see how this thing comes out to fruition at the end of Saturday, my man. Well, let's get into some games. And Friday night, we have a wonderful game. And if you just put like different names to the conferences instead of Mountain West, dude, this would be a top game of the year. Boise State versus UNLV. UNLV is a 3-point home dog in Vegas. Total is 65. I picked this game because it's going to be awesome. Did I play on this game yet? No, I didn't. I don't have a play yet, but I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it, man. UNLV, the second best team in the Mountain West. Boise, clearly the best team just based upon the market here. But UNLV is just an amazing story with what happened with the quarterbacks and Hajj Malik Williams coming in. Before the season, a lot of people were saying that he was just as good as Matthew, the other guy. But he proved it the very first week against Fresno State, and they've been rolling out. Syracuse got them. They're slinging it. They're catching everything. It's just one of those college football games. I don't disagree with that. But one thing I will say about Boise is it took 2 special teams touchdowns for Oregon to beat them at home. And that was pretty serious stuff, man. I know Oregon didn't really gel until Oregon State, but I still have the Boise State a decent amount better than UNLV. just based upon their power numbers and their efficiencies and Ashton Jency running the ball. UNLV is not bad either. So they rank number 19th in offensive EPA, but I mean, Boise State's in the top 5 here. Boise State has neither defense has been great, but Boise State's defense has been better. I will tell you about the total. I'm not taking under 65 or 66. If anything, even though they don't play the fastest game, I think they both rank in the middle in pace of play. I still would look to the over just because of how efficient these offensive has been. I hope it is one of those fun games, that people like. Although big rivalries play each other, it's a big game that those tend to go under. So those are some thoughts on the total right there. Obviously, I gave you nothing, but I just hope it is one of those high scoring. Boise State allowing 45 to Georgia Southern was ugly, but things kind of changed as things went. Both of them allowed 30 or more to Utah State. So that was like, So yeah, it'd be over or nothing. I'm not there yet. I'm kind of just sitting this out, man. But I'll tell you this: if it gets below 3, I probably have to play Boise. I think I got Boise -4 in this. David, do you have something more than I do, or are you just going to enjoy this great college football game?
Yeah, I do. I'm thinking about getting involved with Boise State on the side. I think that they can win this by a touchdown or more. As far as the total, I agree with you. You look at the total of a 65, and that's a high number. So do you really want to play the over? But there's no way that I want to trust the under in this situation. I mean, you look both of these teams. Defensively, they've defended the run very well, but this is just a different animal on both sides. I mean, right now, Ashton Gentry looks like the best running back we've seen in college since Barry Sanders right now. So regardless of how you're doing against the run, you haven't seen a rushing attack like that. And then, like I said, Hajj Malik Williams on the other side for UNLV. That's a dynamic threat. So I think that maybe worst case scenario scoring wise, this is maybe a 38-28 game in favor of Boise State, which would still slightly get us to the over. And as good as though UNLV has been, their schedule has not been quite as challenging as what Boise State's faced. Like you said, Boise State one loss that was on the road to Oregon. So I've got to get behind Boise State here. I think that's maybe more so than the total. I do like Boise State in this one. The thing that really does worry me a little bit is the Boise State's pass defense. Right now, 109th in yards per play allowed, but I still think that they'll be able to get the win, and that's also maybe even more reason to play the over.
Yeah, absolutely. And Boise, that's my worry too. But and that's why you're getting short enough to a 3. And that's kind of when you start getting more interest in Boise. And I agree with that because, like I said, my number's past 3. So I could see that happen and maybe be a personal play for me too. But yeah, Boise State allows defensive explosiveness. They rank 117th in defensive explosive plays, and UNLV can do that. They'll be able to have some pretty big explosive plays, in my opinion, against this offense. As a matter of fact, they're not the highest explosive play, but their field position is great. They rank 2nd in field position, so they start well from obviously the field. Number 2 in offensive field position for UNLV, number 1 in defensive field position. So that's interesting, kind of like a little intricacy to think about right there. But I'm excited for this game, man. It's going to be great, whether we bet it or not. Let's move on to the next game then, David. And I think we're going to go with one you picked here. And I have Washington versus Indiana. And Indiana is -6.5. The total is 53.5. So there's a lot to digest with this one. Why don't you break it down?
Yeah, so this is one that I am going to get involved in. So obviously Indiana right now, just one of the hottest teams in college football. They've covered the spread in 6 straight games. They've scored 41 points or more in each of those games, winning each one by 14 points or more. Now, people who maybe don't follow it as closely, I mean, the 6.5, it almost looks like really a layup when you're seeing that what Washington did in their last game against Iowa. But the big story here, Curtis Rorick, a former Ohio University quarterback who's really been having a great year for Indiana. He's out with a thumb injury. Doesn't seem like he's going to be out too long, but he's definitely going to miss this game. So they're going to be Indiana's going to be going to their backup quarterback, Tavian Jackson, in this game. Who looked well played well last week. Last year, not so great, but he still got experience in 6 games, including playing against Michigan and Ohio State. I'm still going to back Indiana in this one, minus the 6.5. I think that the difference for the quarterback injuries baked in there, but I think that Indiana, even with a backup quarterback who does have some experience, he started his career at Tennessee before transferring over, but Indiana still 28th in yards per rush attempt, 36 in rushing yards per game. They've got a nice backfield of running backs, Justice Ellison, Tyson Lawton as well. They've had transfers that have come in, really experienced running backs. And with Washington was gashed by Iowa. I mean, Iowa beat them 40-16. Iowa only threw for 108 yards in that game, so they didn't really need a lot of dynamic quarterback play for that to happen. And another thing with watching this Washington team, they do a lot of the little things wrong. One of the games that I lost earlier this year, I was on them against Rutgers. That was an ugly game, and really I think they should have won that game, but they had a lot of missed field goals. But that really wasn't a fluke. They've been missing a lot of field goals, and they've been struggling on special teams all year long. And this team has also been one of the worst in the nation in penalties. So when you look at the special teams penalties, the way they've been going up against the run, even with the backup quarterback, I like Indiana with the 6.5. And College Game Day is also there. They don't come to Indiana too much, so so I think Indiana's still going to step up and rally without their starting quarterback.
God, was Game Day there that COVID year where everyone only played 5-6 games in the Big Ten, and they were having that magical year that last year? Before
Penix,
they got
right?
back. I can't remember if they were there, but you're right. College Game Day being there is huge. Tavon Jackson is the brother of Trace Jackson Davis, who played at Indiana, of course, and is in the NBA that plays with the Golden State Warriors. So that's kind of cool. I think, he probably looked at Indiana when he was being recruited. He's like, the hell with this school. And then he's seen Kirk Cinetti transfer and bring the James Madison crew over there. He's like, okay, well, I'll go over there. So, I'm not so worried about him, really. And he's got some really good numbers so far. Was it like a 10-1 interception race, touchdown interception race? He's looking good. The thing that I didn't bet it reasonably, because I really like Washington and their coach there. I think, he's the reason Arizona was so good, in my opinion, Jed Fish. And to me, Washington is a buy-on team. But, man, this spread got low. And, holy cow, I was on the wrong side last week when I was on Nebraska. I thought this was Indiana State. I've got some futures on Indiana, and they are some massive numbers because I seen them being good this year. And I could not believe that I'm still involved in this market. So I'm certainly an Indiana fan this week. Do I lay the points to put the extra on there? I don't know yet. It'll probably go back to 7 because I think the public's going to be all over it. But Washington is off the bye, so you have to remember that. It could be a small letdown spot for Indiana. Yeah, I lean Indiana no matter what. I just didn't quite get to the window yet, David, but we'll see if I do. Now we got Notre Dame. Notre Dame versus Navy. This is an interesting game because, Navy is somewhat, you can say, a rival with Notre Dame. They've been playing every year, and the Navy's a dog of +13. They're not a home dog because this is played at MetLife Stadium, not far from really. I mean, Notre Dame travels everywhere. Let's face it, the Navy's going to have a crowd there, and the total is 52. So I played this game, and I played it late, but there's a reason for it, Notre Dame did smoke them last year by 39 points, and I watched that. And I was really worried for my over. And I was like, geez, they better score something. Thank God Notre Dame did again. But now you wonder, why is it only 13? The Notre Dame, I feel like they upgraded their quarterback going to Riley Leonard this year. Well, there's a lot of changes here with Navy. Navy's been amazing. And it's because, Brian Newberry has got this team locked in. And 5-1 ATS, 6-0, a 14.4 ATS margin. David, they're a really good team, and I could not power rate these guys up fast enough, really, to get to where they belong. Now, you could say that Navy hasn't played anybody, but it's not like Notre Dame did since Texas A&M. I mean, they got beat by Northern Illinois, and a lot of their victories have not aged all that well. The Huskies, they beat the Irish by running the ball. The Irish's weakness, 73rd in defensive rushing success rate. That's not good against a team like Navy that runs the ball. They rank 8th in offensive success rate and 5th in offensive rush EPA. But Notre Dame, you can say, oh, they stopped the triple option last year, but this is a different triple option, you know. Offensive coordinator Drew Cronick comes in with some T-wing concepts. So it's different than what Navy saw last year. Plus, they throw some touchdowns. And it's Blake Horvath that I have with a 10-1 TD to interception ratio. Sorry, I misspoke last game. I knew it was there somewhere, but I think Navy covers this. I think Navy has a shot to win this outright. Pound the ball like Northern Illinois did. It's a revenge spot for Navy. I'm taking the 13. I think it's still a good play at 13. What are your thoughts?
When do you want to talk about money line long shots? I know with Notre Dame, after that Texas A&M win, a lot of people were ready to crown them on their way going to the playoffs, and they stumbled against Northern Illinois, huge loss, and it was still, Notre Dame can still run the table till USC, but even then, I thought that this Navy or Army game, I wouldn't be shocked if they lose one of these games outright. I'm not so sure if it's going to be this one or not, but I actually like the over in this game, over 52. I know that Notre Dame, I mean, their defense has been great, especially against the pass, but this still, when you're playing a team like Navy, especially the first time seeing this option this year, it's tough to really kind of gauge some of the other stats. Notre Dame's schedule hasn't been as impressive. I mean, they had the Stanford, even the Georgia Tech. I mean, without Haynes King, at quarterback for Georgia Tech, who was injured, that was a big downgrade in that game. And Navy, I mean, they've scored 34 points or more in every single game this year. They hung up 56 points on a good Memphis team. Then you also look at Notre Dame. I know this is a better Navy team, although the Navy defense, though, still, not great. They've been outscoring people. And when you look at Notre Dame scored 34 points on Navy or more in 5 straight years, I think that this total of 52 is a bit low. I like the over. I think that at some point, I'm not so sure if Navy covers or not. I think that this is a game that I can see this being maybe a 28-21 game going into the fourth quarter. And then it's just going to either be, will Notre Dame pull away late, or will Navy make some plays and hang around? But quarterback play, like you mentioned from Navy, they're throwing the ball a lot better than they have in the past. So I like the over for this one.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what's funny about both the total and the side in this? You're going to know it on Navy's first drive if you're on the right side or not, because you're going to see, is Notre Dame stopping the run game or not? It's going to tell you, because if they are, Navy's going to be in some trouble, and so is the over. So, that's, I think, but you know what? That's why you and I and other people can pivot pretty quickly, because these option teams really give you big tells more than other teams that play football. You're going to know if it's stoppable or not. So I'm excited for this game. It's going to be a wonderful watch. Let's move on to the next game that you picked. Bowling Green versus Toledo. Toledo is laying 2.5 points. The total of this game is 49.5. So why don't you start on this one, David?
Yeah, so I always like a chance to talk about this game. I know at the beginning you asked me to tell people who my first time here a little bit about myself. Well, I was born and raised in Toledo, and I'm a alumni of Bowling Green. So this is a rivalry I've followed for pretty much my whole life. And Toledo's the home team here, but it's only about a 25-minute drive away. What I like about this particular game, when you look at it on the surface, a total of 49.5, it almost seems that the under could be a play here. Toledo coming off of really ugly, low-scoring 13-6 win against Northern Illinois, and then before that, only put up 15 points against Buffalo. But both of those games were on the road. Toledo, they put up 30 points or more in all of their home games. Went to Mississippi State this season. I know Mississippi State's down in the SEC, but that's still a SEC team, and Toledo put 41 points on them. And I think that when these two teams get together, we see a lot of the total is always, the scoring is always high. Neither team is very conservative. Even on Bowling Green, they've been a little bit of a weird team. You look at their last couple games scoring wise, but they've showed that they can move the ball in some big situations. I mean, they were very competitive against Penn State and Texas A&M. Then they laid an egg on homecoming, even though the points were there. I think that this is the type of game that Bowling Green's going to come out and score some points. The last two seasons that these teams have played, we've seen 16 scoring drives that have been 3 minutes or less. And the last two seasons, there have been 8 touchdowns scored in 90 seconds or less. The coaching staffs, you can go back a little bit further because these coaches have been there for a while. Jason Candle for Toledo since 2016, LaFurl over at Bowling Green since 2019. And there's been 63 points or more scored in 7 of the last 9 meetings. In the last 3 years, they got to that 63-point mark. The totals were only between 46 and 50.5. So I think we're going to see some aggressive play calling. And I like the over in this one. I liked Bowling Green a little bit more when it was at the 3.5. But I would lean on Bowling Green there because Toledo's been the better team the last few years they played. Last year, Bowling Green still got the cover, losing by 1. The year before that, Bowling Green got a win as a double-digit underdog. So I'm leaning Bowling Green here, but I really like the over, even though if you look at the last couple games, it may seem like the under's the play. That total's gone up from 47 to 49.5 for a reason. So it's going to be the over 49.5 for me.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I mean, wow, you know your history. This is a big rivalry. These two teams hate each other, and like you said, you know it best being from Toledo area. I should have Brad Powers on too because he's a Bowling Green guy. You guys could have hashed it out a little bit. I don't disagree with that. You have a very convincing point on historical betting here, and yeah, it could be one of those things that Bowling Green gets to put up some points against that Toledo better looking defense, and the other way around. Now, who's playing quarterback? That's my question. Is their main quarterback Tucker Gleason coming back? Is it going to be John Richter? Now John Richter looked okay when he played, so I guess that's my question. I would feel better if it was Tucker Gleason probably, but no, I think the line move was there for a reason. I have a conflict in my power ratings and my algorithm on the side. I run a metric function with efficiency numbers, and the efficiency numbers favor Bowling Green, but my power ratings favor Toledo by 4 or 5 points. So I'm like, it's almost kind of right in the middle where it tells me to stay off the side. But I think that you're onto something here with the over, and I wrote it down. Let's move on to the next game. Wisconsin versus Penn State, and Penn State's plus 6.5. The total of this is 48. I got to give a shout out to last week. A Penn State guy came on the show or in the chat here and said Penn State's favored by 11.5 here on FanDuel. And I took a look at him like, seriously? This was before last week's game, so I hit Wisconsin. I couldn't give it out, but as soon as it opened back up at 8.5, I gave out Wisconsin. But now we're down to 6.5. It just keeps going down. So I got some good line value personally on it. But I think the movement's warranted. And Penn State is coming off a bye, and that's always dangerous. But they're coming to Wisconsin on a bye in a night game at Camp Randall. And Camp Randall sells booze now to the kids. I don't know if anyway, y'all knew that, but not that they needed it to after they hit the stadium. But the night game in Camp Randall, this place could be nutty. Might see some streakers. I don't know. It's going to be real interesting. But here's the thing. Braden Locke, it's funny, they're calling him Locktober right now because he's been playing so well. I don't use the word lock when it comes to sports betting, but I will say that, like we mentioned earlier, the Bama game got out of hand. They were actually driving on Bama until Van Dyke got hurt. Then, when your quarterback gets hurt that early in the season, it takes just everything out of the stomach of all the players. The USC choke, it showed they could score. Somehow they weren't used to being up, and then they choked it away. But the last 3 games, they won by their opponents by 20 or more points. Luke Fickell's kind of gotten playing good football, and same with Phil Longo, a little bit more on offense. It looks like his offensive concepts are relating more to Braden Locke. He's throwing some nice timing routes. He's not getting himself in trouble throwing bad balls. He's throwing it away. I like seeing that because turnovers really tell you a lot about who's going to win a game. You can actually predict the winner in a lot of these games just by the turnover margin. Penn State struggled against Illinois a little bit. Now, I guess that's understandable looking at Illinois. But they only beat a bad UCLA team by 16 points. UCLA, they're the one with the coach, Franklin, that likes to cover spreads. UCLA is the one that made sure they didn't cover. And they should have lost to USC on the road. Now, USC's got their own problems, but that overtime, the pass interference not called in there. I don't know if you saw that game, David. I thought USC got maybe a little screwed at the end. I'm not saying they would have won, but it was pretty bad. Wisconsin, believe it or not, even after the awful losses, still a nice positive 0.8 net yards per play for the year. They ranked 30th in offensive success rate, 27th on defense. Penn State is top 4 in both offenses and defensive success rate, but they had a very easy non-conference. They didn't play anybody since USC. Wisconsin at least said they played Bama, right? Now, you look at the last 3 games, or at least just conference play, and this stat kind of shocked me. And after 3 games, Wisconsin's number 2 in yards per play, conference play, and number 2 in opponent yards per play in conference. So I guess Oregon must be 1 in yards per play, and Ohio State must be 1 in opponent yards. But it's just funny to see Wisconsin that's sitting there at 2. But it just kind of goes to show you how well they're playing. Penn State's 5th in both categories. I think this is a field goal game at the end, and maybe Penn State does get Wisconsin, but I still like it at 6.5. I'm going to give it 2 stars for Wisconsin. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually have to agree with you on that one overall. This is probably going to be a stay away game for me. One thing that we realize as sports bettors is that this thing is a lot harder than just looking at the 2 teams and picking a winner. And this is one of those games that when you just look at it, Wisconsin versus Penn State, it's like, oh, Penn State, 6.5 Penn State. Yeah, Penn State should kill them. But when you really, and I mentioned even earlier in the show, there's a lot of things with Wisconsin, the way that they play, it's not real glamorous. But what has Penn State really done this season that's been that impressive? You said James Franklin loves to cover spreads. It's been a little different this year. Talked about Bowling Green and Toledo. Bowling Green gave them really all that they could handle early on in the first half. Bowling Green hasn't been that great this season. They had to win over Illinois. That's probably the best win that they've had on the schedule. That USC game, they got down. They ended up coming back, but USC, how impressive are they? Yeah, I think that's Penn State, even when they're scoring, a lot of long scoring drives. I think that this, that's the type of game Wisconsin wants to play. A lot of long possessions, milk the clock on both sides, and then we'll see what happens in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, it is tough to, just like my initial reactions, I don't necessarily trust Wisconsin, but I don't trust Penn State a lot either. And when you're talking about laying points at night on the road, I guess the question is now with the 6.5, how often does this happen? Where you mentioned the 11.5 and the 8.5, and it was Wisconsin. Was Wisconsin to play at 11.5 and 8.5? Does this fall on 7 or something like that? Is it still? But I think I would lean Wisconsin and agree with you. But I'm probably just going to completely stay away from this one.
I could shoot for a middle, but my power ratings don't say middle yet. It doesn't say middle. So that's why I'm not going to do it unless my algorithm and power ratings tell me to go in the middle. Otherwise, I still feel like I'm giving up value. But yeah, it's a situation where I know Penn State's desperate, but they're not exactly the team that can really show up and put on points. And this is a tough atmosphere that they're going into. It's a big first test for them, in my opinion. I think they got it too easy against West Virginia. Wisconsin is healthier now, minus their quarterback that might not even be as good as the second string now, but the second string playing really well in Braden Locke. So we'll stick with that one, but we'll go to this game, which is a really interesting game to me. BYU versus UCF. Well, I wrote down 1.5, and I'm just going to tell you that I had to do a double take when this came out, and it really hasn't moved much. I was like, UCF's only a 1.5 favorite against BYU after that heartbreaking loss last week at Iowa State. The total's 55.5. So I'm curious, David, where you're going with this one.
Yeah, I like the total. I agree with you on the side as far as it looking strange. And one of the reasons it looks like, obviously, with this number, BYU should be the play. But it kind of reminds me of last season. I know that they had that UCF had that game against Oklahoma State, I believe, where it was 1.5, and UCF won like 45-3. So, sometimes when those lines are weird, they're weird for a reason. But I like the over 55.5 in this game. Maybe a little bit late to the party, but looking at these totals for BYU have been looking weird for me for several weeks, and I've been overthinking it. I mean, the last 3 weeks, the totals of 47, 48, and 53. Last week, I know they were talking about the precipitation, possibly snow early in the week. And what we've seen with those low totals, they went on to combine for 62, 60, and 73 points. They have flown over the total. I think that we're going to see that again. I do not think that Oklahoma State is going to be able to stop. I'm sorry, I don't think UFC. I was thinking last year. I don't think UCF is going to be able to stop BYU. Now, you do have some quarterback concerns with they benched KJ Jefferson, but they've got a really good running game over there at Central Florida. And, RJ Harvey coming off of a big game of 196 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns last week against Iowa State. And we saw Ollie Gordon, great running back for Oklahoma State, who got going against BYU last week. So I think that Central Florida is going to be able to run the ball with some success. And I think that we're going to get this game is going to at least get into the 60s. So BYU, they've scored 34 points and more in 6 of their 7 games this season. I like the over.
I can't disagree with that, man. I thought you were going to go with the side. I thought you were going to throw BYU out there, and I was going to disagree because I'm not I'm not on UCF, but I do agree with the over, and there's a lot of reasons. For one, UCF's at home, and they actually will dictate the pace. They rank 24th in tempo. They've been erratic with the ball, and it's not like Ja'Cory Brooks has been that great of a quarterback over there. I think or Ja'Cory Brown, I should say. He's only got 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Who's better? I don't like KJ Jefferson that much, but I will say, from a rushing standpoint, UCF shouldn't even throw the ball. They should just run the ball all day because BYU can't stop the run. The problem is teams let BYU jump them, and then they do stupid things like throw picks, like the way Kansas State lost that game. I was on BYU, thank God, that night, and Kansas State choked their way. But, I mean, BYU's kind of getting by, luckily. And if UCF watches any freaking tape this week, they should just run the ball because the stats on BYU is bad. 93 in defensive rush EPA. That is not good. They are success rate 45th in rushing success rate, or total success rate 79th in rushing success rate. So those stats aren't really good. 78th in allowing yards per rush. UCF has some really good running game going on over there, and they have 2 guys that can run the ball. RJ Harvey obviously was kind of like a Doak Walker type favorite. He's averaging 6.69 yards per rush, and then Ja'Cory Brown can run the ball too, and he's going to run the ball. So I'm really considering a side here, but the over definitely doesn't scare me away. I just hope it's just not a lot of 4th and 1s and they're just milking, the clock. That's the only thing I worry about. And you're right, we are late to the party, David, on it. But I'm deciding which way to go with this one. But I wanted to disagree with you, but it looks like we're not. Let's do a little hodgepodge then, man. We'll put you down for UCF over. and the 55.5. I always say UFC and UCF. I always say that, by the way, because
I started saying Central Florida right before I started thinking about UFC. I was like, let me get
I'm a big
I
UCF.
know the difference for people out there. Sometimes you're just talking too fast.
Yeah, sure, but I'm a UFC fan too. I'm
Gotcha.
excited about this event. I'm excited about this event this weekend too. So I screw it up constantly. But I mean, what do you think about Sparty with Michigan here? It's funny. This line keeps coming down towards Sparty, and it's like my number's 4.5, and let's see where it is now. It's 3.5. Holy cow! This was like at 6.5 earlier in the week. I can't lay. It's hard to lay points with Michigan, but this comes down to a 3. I like Jonathan Smith and all, but Michigan is in their buy low spot, and like we said, Michigan State's in their sell high spot. It's Michigan or nothing for me, David.
Yeah, I haven't trusted Michigan State too much. I haven't been overly impressed with them, other than that Iowa game. But I really would love to, and people who know me, I would really love to see Michigan State win this game. I would. I mean, one of my best friends, if he's watching, he loves Michigan. I would love to just see Michigan. He hates more than anything when they lose to Michigan State, even though Ohio State's the rival. It's like they can understand when that happens, even though but when the Michigan football fans, they hate losing to Michigan State. So as much as I would love to see that happen, I think Michigan is the play, Michigan or nothing, because they're getting a little bit disrespected, and they definitely want to win this game. It's hard to trust Michigan State. I think that I'm afraid that if you take Michigan State in this game, this could be one of those games where you take them at the 3.5 and you get, halfway through the second quarter and it's like, what was I thinking? I still think there's more talent on that Michigan side, and I think that I would not be surprised if Michigan, even though it's hard to see them winning by double digits, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. So I love to disagree. I'd love to see Michigan lose, but I would not bet on it. I'm taking Michigan.
You're okay. Yeah, I would lean Michigan. Here's the thing. It's little brother, big brother still. And Sherrod Moore better not show up back if he loses to Michigan State here at home.
No.
That would just be complete devastating. And it's not like Michigan State is all that good. Now, they had that big game against Iowa, and that was just the spot of all spots to back them. I wish I backed them last week. I couldn't at 6 because my numbers had Iowa -9, but it was just a spot play, and Michigan State, they're not good against the pass. They rank 88th in passing success rate. They're actually a little bit better against the run, and I could see that why some of the pressure came on this number against Michigan. But I still think it's going to go down. I think the public hates Michigan now. Now, if you're a Michigan fan, dude, you won the national championship last year. I would give my team like 5 years to be crappy. I'm not. It's not like you have to think like you're Alabama or nothing, dude. I'd be so happy if my Badgers won a national championship. I'd be so freaking happy. It wouldn't matter if it all blew up, dude. So, I mean, from that perspective, I would not be upset as a Michigan fan as much as you think you should be by losing to Sparty. But I understand college football rivalries and all. Kansas State's interesting. Manhattan, Kansas State laying 10, total 55.5. Now, Kansas kind of finally figured it out last week when they beat up on Houston, but it was also a big spot for them, coming off the bye, just looking terrible under Lance Leipold. But, man, I think I still have Kansas State favored by a little bit bigger of a number. What about you, David?
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those, rivalries you'd like to, with taking the rivalry into consideration, you'd like to back the dog, but it's Kansas State or nothing for me. I haven't been impressed with Kansas. I actually live in Houston now. I follow that team pretty closely, and I think they're offensively, they had that TCU game, but offensively and overall, that Houston team is terrible this year. So I would not. They got to do more than beat Houston to show that they've proved that they've turned the corner. Kansas State, they still hate Kansas, and I think that they would love to embarrass them. I think that this is probably, that -10, probably not enough. I think Kansas State wins this one probably by 14 or more.
Yeah, I have -12, so it's not really enough for me to get to the window at a 10. I'm going to sit here and hope maybe that contrarian dog money comes in on a in-state rivalry, but it would take the turnovers for them not to cover this thing. And I hope they learn from the BYU game because there's not a lot of room for error here in the Big 12 to get to that Big 12 championship game or to make the playoffs. So I think Kansas State should know that. What about Vanderbilt? Can they pull a rabbit out of their ass again, my friend? Plus 19 against Texas, a pissed off Texas team too, right?
I don't think that I don't think that they I don't think that they can. I don't at 18, I think last time I checked about 18 and a half. I'm
It's
not
19.
sure that 19. I'm not sure that I want to get involved at more than more than 17. I mean, I could see this maybe being at 41-24 game. So I don't know if I really want to get involved, but I could see Texas destroying them. It's interesting how quickly things can change. I wasn't one of them, but I heard so many people last week thought that Texas could beat Georgia by 2 touchdowns, right? And now all of a sudden a week later we're talking about can they be upset by Vanderbilt? But I think with how Vanderbilt played this year, getting that big win against Alabama and Texas being ticked off, I think that they're going to get their best shot. Vanderbilt was not that impressive against Ball State last week. And I know it's easy to say, well, it was Ball State. They've got Texas on deck. They didn't show too much, but they really were playing with their food quite a bit in that one. But still, I've got to take Texas in this one. Even on the road, I think that Texas is looking to make a statement.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I upgraded Vanderbilt a pretty good amount, this season. But they just when they played down to their competition too, because when they played Georgia State, they lost to Georgia State. That was that was Georgia State's only cover this year when that happened. How insane is that, man? Their only cover this year. That is nuts to me. Yeah, I mean Vanderbilt. I don't have. I have Texas probably winning by like 22 points or so. So I have Texas as the favorite here. In my numbers, I think the coaching there just throws me off. Why the hell did you do that and throw in Vanning in this first half there just to kick your quarterback in the nuts? I don't understand why he did that. And I wonder if there's going to be some residual effects of this stuff going on through the year. I expect Texas to win and cover this, but I'm not quite there. Maybe some public dog money comes in on Vanderbilt and gives us a 17 or something. That would be nice. I would be happy to oblige if that happens. Ole Miss probably pissed off too, but Oklahoma embarrassed. So you got a 20-point spread with Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is funny enough. They have 2 losses, but they're actually in the top 3 in both yards per play and opponent yards per play. They shouldn't have any losses with those numbers. But I'm still in a survivor, and I'm trying to decide if I burn Ohio State or burn Ole Miss. The public, everyone's going to be doing it. But I'll tell you, this year, man, nobody's losing in Survivor. It's like still over half the people are in this thing. And some weeks we had to pick 2, and I'm hemming and hawing between this, or I could just try to get the nuts and play Iowa against Northwestern. That could go pretty bad when it comes to Iowa, man. I don't know, but if I could get there, but I don't got too much else in this, but why don't we move on to our next segment, and that's beer bet bangers. It's just a long shot, and I'll go first. I'm going to go with Louisiana Monroe to win outright at plus 250. What's funny about Louisiana Monroe? They're not the disgusting team that's completely in the bottom of my power ratings that they've been in the past. They've actually showed some life this year, and they're 5-1 against the spread. The only game they didn't cover was against Texas, ironically. But ULM, man, they're putting up some defense, and they beat James Madison this year. I mean, this is kind of a serious team. And you look at South Alabama. That's the team that I cannot figure out. I mean, Louisiana Monroe is like even in yards per play, and they should have beat people by more margin, I guess. But South Alabama, man, they lost to Arkansas State by a couple points. Arkansas State's not that good. They lost to Ohio, but they blow away Appalachian State. And this is when people thought Appalachian State was still good. They lost comfortably by 32 points to LSU, but they're laying 7.5 here. I just think Louisiana Monroe is a little bit sneaky good. They're only allowing 5 yards per play on defense. They total less than 4 yards per rush. What the hell, man? I think they get this one plus 250.
Yeah, I think that's a good play. Louisiana Monroe has been one of those teams that has been disrespected by the market, but doesn't really get talked about because it's Louisiana Monroe, right? So there's not too many opportunities for people to talk about them. In South Alabama, like you mentioned, a lot of their wins, the spots that they came in, even at that Northwestern State win, which I know it's Northwestern State, but it got so much attention because I think they put up like 84 points in that game, and it got stopped early. So it still got a lot of attention, even in the betting market, because a lot of tickets got thrown out because they ended the game early. So with that being said, when you have two teams like this that don't get a lot of public love, South Alabama has had a couple national moments, that in the Appalachian State win, that have got national recognition. So I think that's why Louisiana Monroe is being a little bit disrespected in this one. But I do not disagree with you in that. I don't.
All right, my man. Well, what do you have for like a beer bet banger that you can throw some beer money on and maybe be able to capitalize with a few cases?
Well, kind of going against what you were saying early on, and of course, this is a beer bet banger. So I'm looking at Colorado to win the Big 12. It's plus 1,200. I think that's worth a shot. I mean, they're playing Cincinnati this week. Cincinnati, we mentioned they're tough, but they're playing that game in Colorado. Big one that they're going to have to worry about after that. They go to Texas Tech. I think that could be a wild shootout that they could possibly pull out. They play Utah. Utah is a mess right now. Offensively in that game's in Colorado. Then they go at Kansas, the home game against Oklahoma State to end the regular season. A point being, I think that the way Colorado's been playing, there's a shot that they run the table. Do I think that they run the table? No, they'll probably stumble in one of those games. But at plus 1,200, I think that they can. I think that's a good play. And then once we get to these conference championship games, there could be a chance to hedge. So Colorado at plus 1,200 to win the Big 12, I think, is worth some beer money.
Well, you're not really going against me because they can beat Cincinnati by 3. I'm just taking the Cincinnati. Taking the points, my man. This can happen for you just fine. Or you actually have room for a loss here. So you lost. Colorado lost to Kansas State, and one hell of a close game, to be honest with you. And that's pretty telling. And even if you lost to Cincinnati, there's a chance you run the table. Utah's not what we thought they were going to be. They're done. Utah is bad. They are completely out of the picture, in my opinion. Oklahoma State, they weren't even there from the start. BYU, yeah, I guess BYU is kind of in the way, but still, man, this is a BYU team that we know is a little bit overrated. ASU is a little bit tough, but they should kind of fall back to earth. Yeah, man, I don't disagree with that shot. It's a hell of a shot, and both could happen this week, David. So maybe it does.
You point out, with Utah and Oklahoma State, two of the teams that we really thought would contend in the Big 12, not being there. That thing is just pretty much wide open. So a lot of it is the price, like we're saying, with the with the return that you can get. $100 to wager to win, $1,200. It's not like an even bet that I'm doing. So I'll put that out there for people. I think that's worth it. And another one I mentioned a little bit earlier, we touched on SMU. I think that SMU, just another beer money play there to win the ACC. They're at plus 650. They're behind Miami and Clemson, but the thing about it is right now SMU is undefeated. They're 3-0. Check the regular season schedule. They don't have to play Miami or Clemson. So, they can, playing, Duke, Pittsburgh, Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. And then if they get to the conference championship and they're playing, let's say Miami, they're going to be a big dog in that one. You could, but I think that it's at plus 650. It's worth I think it's worth a shot when you just look at their schedule and that they're a team that is trending in the right direction.
Okay, I'll disagree a little bit with you there, but only because Miami and Clemson don't have to play Miami and Clemson. They don't have to play each other either. So that's kind of a problem. But they do have to have a hiccup. Maybe Clemson at Pittsburgh on November 16th is their hiccup. So that could always happen. And Pittsburgh's kind of in there too. They're undefeated, which is really weird. It's like they're the quiet, undefeated team that nobody's talking about, right? But Pittsburgh's got to play at SMU and Clemson. So I mean, that's kind of their demise, right? A little bit, I would say. I'm looking for Miami here. Miami's got a Florida State, which is a bad team right now. They're 21 points favorites this week. At the same time, that's another one that I didn't use for my survivor, but I'm still probably not going to get there. I thought Miami got fortunate the last 3 games, and that fumble that was called the incomplete pass at the replay, I think that helped me cover the spread last week. I thought that might not have been, it should have been overturned in my opinion. But they have it really easy. Florida State, Duke, at Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and at Syracuse. So Miami's got it really all set up for them. I think they do hiccup somewhere though. Florida State coming off the bye. I don't know if it's here, but they beat Duke. Sorry, or they lost to Duke. They're not coming off the bye. Go ahead.
No, that's actually what I wanted to ask you. I'm glad you mentioned this one. Do you think that there's a chance Florida State could get the cover? I know in a rivalry that seems like a lot of points, but I mean, Florida State's just a mess at quarterback right now. And it seems like this could be one of those years where Miami just embarrasses them and loves doing it. I hate laying 21 in a rivalry, but it's hard to make a case for Florida State.
I don't have Florida State beating them. I don't even have Florida State covering. This would be an amazing coaching job if that happened. I'm trying to figure out my number here on this. I'm trying to look at both. I know that I have Miami minus 26 in my algorithm, so that's kind of high, and then I have Miami minus 19 in my power ratings. So there's a slight disagreement there as well, so it's kind of like 21's maybe a fair spread, but it wouldn't shock me if Miami got some points too, but their coach is bad. Cristobal's bad, and you could see that with that defense. You wonder if he's even working that defense and getting in their face, because they should not be celebrating these wins when they're almost losing these games. It's just real ugly to me to play on Miami in a lot of these spots coming up here. If anything, it'd be November 23rd against Wake Forest is what I'd be looking at. But man, yeah, it's
they do seem like a team that might get a little cocky and overlook one of these opponents. I'm not so sure it's going to be Florida State, but it does seem like that there's going to be a loss that you don't necessarily see which one it's going to be, but it does seem like there's going to be a game here for Miami that happens like that.
Somehow Florida State beat Cal, and Florida State's schedule has been pretty tough. Obviously Memphis is better than people expect. Boston College was ugly, of course, but at SMU, that's okay. Clemson, that's okay. At Duke, that was a close game. They beat Cal. I could see them backdooring this. Yeah, it's probably a good number, my man. But what I think that probably covers it for this. Really enjoyed having you on, David. You had some great stuff. Very well spoken. Love your plays, man. I'm really excited for this Colorado game now, because I'm going to kind of think about that. I'm kind of hoping that we both hit on that one. So why don't you tell our listeners where you can get your great information and play?
Yes, you can follow me on X at Get Sports Strong and getsportstrong.com. That's my site. And if you want to also check out, because I know guys can talk about like picks and records, but if you want to go and look at all of the plays that I've been having, you can check out picksandparlays.net. You'll see me on the leaderboard. We've been killing it in college football the last few weeks. So picksandparlays.net along with getsportstrong.com.
All right. Make sure you guys check out David Delano. Thanks, David. We'll be talking soon.
Thanks a lot.